Last July, my partner and I, both avid hikers, embarked on a trip to our favorite camping spot just west of Shenandoah. Nestled away from the beaten path, the site offered unparalleled views of both Shenandoah and portions of the George Washington National Forest to the west. The initial day and evening were pleasant, albeit our struggle with sleep due to the persistent humidity. Eager to explore, the next morning, we decided to venture into a portion of the Jefferson Forest we had never traversed before. This particular part of the forest comprised ATV trails and about a dozen campsites, including a trail leading to an old fire tower that had piqued our curiosity for quite some time. The drive, approximately 45 minutes from our campsite, meandered through backroads, eventually leading us to the entrance of the Jefferson Forest. However, as we arrived, an eerie feeling crept over us. The campsites were unusually vacant. Having opted not to camp there the previous night due to its reputation for being packed, we observed only 2 occupied spots. One held a desiccated tent surrounded by scattered garbage, clearly abandoned for some time, while the other had a young woman in her late teens setting up a small backpacking tent. We parked our vehicle and began organizing our gear. The young woman, sensing our familiarity with the area, approached us to inquire about the trailhead. Though the vibes of the place were unsettling, I offered directions, secretly hoping she would join us for the hike. She thanked us and headed in the general direction of the trail, disappearing into the forest. We set off in pursuit, exploring ATV trails until we stumbled upon the elusive walking path. Despite encountering 2 passing ATVs, the forest remained eerily quiet, and the woman from the campsite was nowhere to be seen. After about an hour of hiking, we reached the summit of the mountain, where the old fire tower stood tall. The panoramic view was breathtaking, and we snapped some photos before beginning our descent. However, about halfway down, an unexplainable shift occurred. The sounds of birds and bugs ceased, plunging the surroundings into an unnatural silence. It felt as though the ancientness of the forest was bearing down on us, trapping us in an indescribable sense of foreboding. Without exchanging words, my partner and I instinctively started to sprint back to the car. Yet, the unsettling feeling persisted. As we rounded a switchback, an otherworldly shriek pierced the air, a dissonant blend of metal scraping against metal and a choir screaming off-key. Our eyes caught a glimpse of something colossal yet intangible, devoid of color and exuding a malevolent emptiness. The memory blurs as if time folded in on itself, and our next recollection placed us back in the car, 2 hours having inexplicably passed. Dazed and confused, we surveyed the parking lot. Both our cars were where we left them, and the 2 tents at the campsite remained untouched. The young woman's tent mirrored its earlier state, but she was nowhere to be found. Intrigued, I delved into research, attempting to discover if someone had gone missing during our mysterious 2-hour lapse. It took months for my partner and me to openly discuss the unnerving event, and as I explored similar stories, I found solace in the shared experiences of others. Despite my love for hiking, the Appalachian Forest now holds an unshakable aura of trepidation for me. The memory of that inexplicable encounter lingers, leaving me with a profound sense of curiosity and an enduring concern for the mysterious disappearance of the young woman we briefly crossed paths with. In the heart of the wilderness, my wife and I embarked on a seemingly idyllic camping trip, seeking solace in the embrace of nature. Our journey took an unexpected turn when the heavens unleashed a torrential downpour, turning the serene campfire scene into a soggy ordeal. As the rain intensified, we hastily sought refuge within the confines of our tent. The rhythmic drumming of raindrops on the canvas drowned out any semblance of sound, creating an eerie silence punctuated only by the relentless pitter-patter. We exchanged glances, realizing that communication within the tent had become impossible amidst the cacophony. Deciding to cut our losses, we decided to change into dry clothes and call it a night. The tent sheltered us from the raging storm outside, but an unsettling atmosphere began to settle within our temporary haven. Just as we settled into our sleeping bags and extinguished the lights, an unfamiliar sound echoed through the air, a hauntingly familiar tone akin to a dying Motorola phone battery. Perplexed, we fumbled in the dark, realizing that none of our phones emitted such a sound. A chill ran down my spine as the realization sank in. We were miles away from civilization, and our phones were switched off. In the midst of the pouring rain, our senses were compromised. We couldn't discern if anyone approached our tent. Frozen in fear, we clung to each other, the tent walls providing an inadequate barrier between us and the mysterious sound. Tension hung thick in the air as we strained to hear any indication of a presence outside. Unable to discern the origin of the sound, we felt trapped within our canvas sanctuary with only one exit. After what felt like an eternity, I mustered the courage to break free from the paralysis gripping us. Grabbing my flashlight and a sense of urgency, I made a dash for the tent's exit, heart pounding in my chest. Circling the tent, I discovered nothing, no signs of life, no footprints, just the relentless rain. With a mixture of relief and lingering unease, we hastily packed our valuables and embarked on a tense 10-minute trek to our car. The engine roared to life, carrying us away from the mysterious episode that had unfolded in the darkness of the night. Upon reaching the safety of our home, exhaustion claimed us, and we fell into a deep slumber. The next day, curiosity and a lingering sense of disbelief prompted us to return to our campsite to retrieve our belongings. To our surprise, the tent stood undisturbed, as if the events of the previous night were merely figments of our imagination. However, the uncanny climax awaited us at home. As we unpacked, my wife discovered an inexplicable absence: her underwear. Every piece had vanished without a trace, leaving us bewildered and haunted by the enigma that unfolded amidst the rain-soaked woods. It was an experience that defied logic, leaving us with an unsettling realization that someone, or something, had been there with us that night, leaving only a chilling mystery in its wake. It was the early spring of 2016, and I had just celebrated my 24th birthday. My friend and I, avid campers, were on our way to our favorite spot, the Black Canyon Rim Campground just outside of Payson, Arizona. This haven of tranquility held incredible views and was only a few hours away from the bustling city. We made this journey 2 or 3 times each year, reveling in the secluded beauty of the area. As we approached the campground, the entrance was marked by a dirt road directly off the highway, adorned with a sign detailing local wildlife, fire hazards, and pertinent news for camping enthusiasts. The path was mostly linear, with a solitary fork spanning several miles. On a whim, we once explored the dirt road, leading us to another highway entrance with a ranger's tower halfway there. The other path led to a dead end, housing an abandoned cabin hidden behind dense foliage. The snow had mostly melted, leaving behind crisp air, a slight chill, and an awakening fauna. Wild horses, deer, and countless little critters were common sightings during our visits. This particular trip was spontaneous. Both of us had work commitments over the coming weekend, and we decided to seize the opportunity for a brief escape. Arriving around 4 p.m. on a Tuesday, we were later than usual. 2 other groups, both families, had already set up camp relatively close to the entrance, a mere few hundred yards away from the highway. Eager to escape the urban hustle, we drove past our usual spot and found a perfect area, a small clearing hanging off the edge of a hill. From there, the entire valley unfolded beneath us, offering a breathtaking view of the sunset. Little did we know that this serene spot would become the center of an eerie incident the following night. We decided against setting up a tent, opting instead to build a campfire and sleep in the comfort of our cars. With blankets for each of us, we anticipated falling into a blissful slumber. The next day passed uneventfully, spent decompressing and enjoying the rejuvenating environment. However, an uneasy feeling lingered throughout the day, a sensation of being watched. Occasional crunches of leaves, just out of sight, added to the sense of unease. Despite my instincts, I dismissed it as the local wildlife going about its business, and my friend hadn't noticed anything unusual. Nightfall brought no respite from the unsettling feeling. My friend, perhaps sensing something too, took sleeping pills, a rarity for our camping trips, where the natural ambience usually sufficed. As the night deepened, my friend dozed off in the passenger seat, while I tried to wind down in the back, leaning against the side window. Around 1 a.m., as I idly scrolled through my phone, I heard a distinct crunch of fallen leaves just outside the car. I whispered to my friend, but she was already in a deep sleep. I put my phone down, and the forest fell silent. Minutes later, the sound returned, a crunch right outside the car door. My eyes adjusted from the phone's light to the darkness outside as I turned it away. What I saw etched a permanent image in my mind: two dirty, scabbed hands pressed against the window, with long, unkempt nails, belonging to a face shrouded in shadow. I was paralyzed, unable to move or scream. It felt like an eternity, this silent staring contest between me and this mysterious entity. Questions raced through my mind. Why hadn't it fled when it realized I had noticed it? What were its intentions? Could this be the face of death? After what felt like an endless moment, the hands slowly unclenched the window and receded into the darkness. The condensation on the window dispersed, and the crunching sound faded into the distance. Still in shock, I sat there, questioning my inaction. Why hadn't I done anything? Why was I still frozen? Eventually, adrenaline surged through my body. I pounded on my friend's seat, waking her into a dazed confusion. I unlatched and kicked open the back door, scanning the area. Whatever or whoever it was had vanished. In a panic, I grabbed camping supplies strewn outside, cramming everything into the car, periodically glancing over my shoulder. As I slammed the back door shut, a grim reminder of the horror lingered, two handprints imprinted on the window. I wiped them off hastily, as if erasing the event itself. Jumping into the front seat, I floored it out of there. My friend, now fully awake, demanded an explanation. "There's someone out there." "We gotta go," I replied, speeding down the dirt road. She urged me to slow down, and eventually, we reached the highway, driving 20 or so miles before stopping at a Denny's. There, in the harsh fluorescent light, I recounted the night's nightmare. The terror subsided over the next few months, but the embarrassment of my frozen state lingered. People talk about fight or flight, but they forget the third option: freeze. I often wondered what had lurked out there: a prankster camper, a resident of the abandoned cabin, or something more paranormal watching vulnerable campers as they drifted into dreamland. In the years that followed, we continued camping in that area, but always staying close to the highway. Whatever it was, I hoped it was the last I ever saw of it. Growing up in Georgia, my life revolved around hiking and exploring the beautiful landscapes that the state had to offer. However, I couldn't deny the allure of North Carolina's mountains, which drew me in with their breathtaking beauty. I found myself frequently making the drive to North Carolina to embark on new hiking adventures, each one more exciting than the last. On one particular occasion, I decided to camp with my family in an RV in Maggie Valley. The following day, I had a yearning for solitude and adventure, so I convinced my family to drop me off about 10 miles away from the cold mountain trailhead. The plan was simple: hike up, spend a night alone with nature, and make my way back down by morning. Little did I know that this solo journey would turn out to be one of the most unsettling experiences of my life. As I set out on the trail, I quickly realized that this terrain was unlike any I had encountered before. It wasn't necessarily steep, but the constant ups and downs made it surprisingly strenuous. The day wore on, and the sun began its descent, casting long shadows on the trail. Sensing the encroaching darkness, I made the decision to set up camp about half a mile shy of the summit, promising myself that I would resume my ascent at the crack of dawn. As I pitched my tent and prepared for the night, I couldn't shake the feeling of solitude. Not a single soul had crossed my path throughout the hike, and the silence was almost deafening. That night, sleep eluded me, and I lay awake for what felt like hours. In the stillness of the night, I thought I heard faint footsteps around my campsite. Chalking it up to an overactive imagination, I dismissed the notion and tried to find solace in the solitude. However, my unease heightened when I noticed a peculiar sight as the morning light began to filter through the trees. A bundle of dried twigs and berries, meticulously tied with green cord, leaned against the side of my tent. Fear gripped me as I scanned the surroundings, realizing that I hadn't encountered a single person on the trail, yet someone had been close enough to leave this bizarre offering. Summoning my courage, I hastily packed my belongings and abandoned my plans to reach the summit. The descent was swift, my instincts urging me to leave the eerie silence of the mountain behind. On my way down, a dense fog rolled in, and I unwittingly strayed onto a side trail that led me astray. Lost and disoriented, I relied on my compass to guide me back to the main trail, a sense of relief flooding over me when the familiar path reappeared. It wasn't until later that I discovered the chilling truth. On the very morning I stood alone on that desolate trail, a 27-year-old hiker lost his life in the same vicinity. The realization sent shivers down my spine. Someone, or something, had been watching me that night, leaving behind an ominous token. The news of the tragedy made it clear that my hasty descent might have spared me from a potentially perilous encounter. The knowledge that I had been blissfully unaware of the danger lurking nearby only intensified the lingering unease that clung to the memory of that solitary night on Cold Mountain. Several years ago, fueled by my insatiable curiosity and a desire for solitude, I embarked on a camping trip to an old-growth forest nestled in the heart of North Georgia. The guidebook led me through a labyrinth of little country roads, gradually evolving into gravel paths as I delved deeper into the national forest. Parking near an unmaintained trail, a hint that this slice of wilderness was far from a popular haunt, I set out on foot. The forest, a sanctuary of towering hemlock and poplar trees, evoked a sense of awe. These majestic giants stood as a testament to the relentless passage of time, survivors in a world increasingly encroached upon by the human hand. The trail eventually unraveled into a patch of uncharted territory, where the undergrowth was sparse, and the trees loomed overhead. It was in this tranquil oasis that I spent my afternoon, meandering through the woods, absorbing the serenity that only an old-growth forest can offer. Descending towards a babbling creek, I traversed its waters and reached an old field that cradled the land like a natural amphitheater. Surprisingly, the presence of a field hinted at a bygone era, where people might have once called this remote wilderness home. However, as far as my eyes could see, there was no sign of human habitation. Consulting my map, I deduced that I should have been far removed from any roads or settlements, adding a layer of mystery to the deserted landscape. As dusk draped its shadows across the land, I set up my tent, prepared a simple meal, and decided to cap off the evening with a contemplative smoke beneath the canvas of stars. The absence of light pollution offered a celestial spectacle, and I reveled in the opportunity to lose myself in the cosmic expanse. As I lay there, a symphony of nocturnal sounds serenaded the forest. However, amidst the orchestra of crickets and rustling leaves, an incongruous sound echoed from the ridge where I had earlier explored. 3 knocks, resonating like the collision of massive logs, punctuated the night, followed by a pregnant pause before the sequence repeated. The rhythmic pounding reverberated through the bowl-shaped landscape, its intensity almost tangible. Piercing the stillness of the night, the knocks seemed deliberate, purposeful. Instinctively, I sought a rational explanation. Who, or what, could produce such a distinct and forceful sound in the depths of the forest? My logical mind clung to the notion of another human, ascribing the eerie knocks to an elaborate prank or a late-night activity with an unknown purpose. Despite the darkness shrouding the forest, I felt an uncanny connection to the origin of the knocks. The direction coincided with the section of old growth I had explored earlier in the day, heightening my sense of unease. Was it a message, a signal, or perhaps a warning meant for me alone? Eventually, the knock ceased, leaving an air of mystery lingering in the night. An undercurrent of tension accompanied my bedtime, and I drifted into sleep with a lingering awareness that I had borne witness to something beyond the ordinary. The following morning, I broke camp, my senses heightened and anticipation lingering in the crisp woodland air. As I hiked out, a palpable silence enveloped the forest, devoid of the enigmatic knocks that had haunted the night before. Although I yearned for an encore, the wilderness held its secrets close, and my journey continued without further revelations. Sharing my experience with friends, I was met with speculative theories, a Sasquatch encounter or the proximity to a hidden homestead. Yet, the question lingered, why would a person venture into the woods, in the dead of night, creating rhythmic echoes with logs under the cloak of darkness? The answers eluded me, leaving the memory of those mysterious knocks etched in the fabric of my wilderness odyssey, an enigma waiting to be unraveled.